If my uncle finds out I told you, I might not make it." The words barely escaped the lips of a 14-year-old boy standing at the entrance of an old biker clubhouse. He looked small against the backdrop of rumbling engines, oil-stained concrete, and the weather-worn American flag fluttering from the rusted pole. The men inside didn't laugh. They didn't ask questions. They just let him go. What they didn't know then was that this boy, quiet, skinny, and scared, was about to uncover something far bigger than any of them could imagine. This wasn't just about a bad landlord or a late rent check. This was about a crooked city official, a traitor hiding in plain sight, and a plan to wipe out the only place these bikers had ever called home. It all started early one Tuesday morning. A plain white envelope sat wedged between the iron gate and the faded welcome mat outside the Liberty Sons Motorcycle Club. Nobody had paid attention to that mat in years. It was more symbol than decoration now. Tom Granger, the vice president, was the first to spot the envelope when he rolled in, coffee in hand, his boots still dusty from the night before. The seal on the envelope was official, government kind, not the kind that ever brought good news. Tom tore it open right there in the parking lot. The words didn't change, no matter how many times he read them. Property seized. Vacate within 24 hours. He stood frozen for a moment, then walked straight inside and slammed the letter on the table where the Liberty Sons had gathered every week for nearly 16 years. It didn't take long for the room to unravel. Voices rose, chairs scraped back, accusations flew. Was it a mistake? Some new city rule? A mix-up in paperwork? Then someone asked the question no one wanted to answer. When was the last time we actually paid rent? All eyes turned to Earl Jackson, the president of the club. He sat slouched in the corner booth, his face gray and worn like old concrete left too long in the sun. Earl hadn't looked like himself in months. The weight he'd carried wasn't just on his shoulders, it was etched into every line on his face. His hands shook slightly as he held his coffee. Finally, someone asked directly, "Earl, is this real? Did we miss payments?"
Earl looked up, then down, then up again. The room grew still. "I gambled it," he said. "The rent, not just this month, the one before that too. I thought I could win it back before anyone noticed." The silence that followed was louder than any outburst. Tom took a slow breath, trying to stay calm. Daniel, one of the younger members, wasn't so measured. "You gambled our home?" His voice cracked with disbelief. Another man, Julian, the oldest member, quiet and respected, asked how much. $18,000, Earl replied, barely above a whisper. A chair flew into the wall. Two members stormed out the back. Across the street, a boy named Ethan Morgan sat on his front steps, watching everything unfold. He wasn't supposed to be there. He should have been getting ready for school. But something about the tension in that clubhouse had pulled him in, the way a dog knows a storm is coming before the clouds roll in. Ethan remembered, 3 years ago, standing in the schoolyard while a group of boys shoved him around. He remembered the fear, the silence, the way nobody helped. Then a man in a leather vest had stepped in, Tom Granger. His daughter went to the same school. One look at the Liberty Sons patch, and those bullies scattered like mice. Tom had handed Ethan a soda and said, "If anybody messes with you again, you come find us, no questions asked." And they meant it. They protected him because that's who they were. But now, those same men were the ones in trouble, and Ethan, for the first time in his life, knew something they didn't. That same afternoon, Ethan stood across the street, still watching the clubhouse like a satellite stuck in orbit. His backpack lay forgotten beside him on the porch, school entirely erased from his thoughts. He'd never seen the Liberty Sons look like this, angry, broken, divided. The place that once felt like a fortress now seemed like it might collapse under the weight of its own secrets. And Ethan had a secret too, one that might just change everything. He crossed the street slowly, his palms damp, heart loud in his chest. As the men drifted outside to smoke and argue, Ethan slipped through the door and found Grace Jackson, daughter of Earl, and the only person in the room who still looked like she was thinking clearly. She stood near the old bar, speaking quietly into her phone, frustration etched into every word. When she saw Ethan, she started to wave him off. "Ethan, now's really not the time." But Ethan didn't leave. His voice came out low. "It's about the eviction." That got her attention. Grace hung up, eyes narrowing. "What do you know?" Ethan hesitated, then told her. "My uncle, Vincent Morgan, he works for the city. He's the one who dropped off the notice. He said he was handling the biker problem, said it like he was proud." Grace froze. Then slowly she looked back toward the room where her father sat alone, staring at nothing. "Come with me," she said. She led Ethan to the back office, a cramped space that smelled like oil, mildew, and forgotten years. She knelt beside him, eye level, and asked, "What else do you know?" Ethan looked down at his hands. "Uncle Vince keeps this binder, thick one, locked in his desk drawer at work. He showed it to me once, said it was insurance, full of property notes and payments. He said it proves everything he's done, said nobody can touch him because he knows where all the bodies are buried." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Last night he said the Liberty Sons were personal, that he'd been waiting for the right time." Grace's expression darkened. "And 24 hours notice isn't standard eviction process unless someone's pulling strings." She stood up slowly, already forming a plan. "Ethan, listen to me. That binder, it could be exactly what we need, but I'm not asking you to do anything yet. Let me talk to a few people first." But Ethan already knew there was no yet. His uncle didn't just bend rules, he broke them, reshaped them, then used them like weapons. And Ethan had seen too much to pretend it wasn't happening.
That evening, as the sky turned orange and gold, Grace parked 2 blocks from the city's municipal building. Ethan sat beside her, quiet, hands clenched tight in his lap. "You still don't have to do this," she said. "We'll find another way." But Ethan shook his head. "There is no other way. We've only got until morning." Grace nodded once, handed him a pair of lockpicks she didn't explain, and walked with him to the side entrance. The janitor, Mrs. Olivia Rios, had left the door cracked open, same as they agreed. The building was dim and hollow, like a church after hours. Vincent's office was on the 3rd floor. The lock on his drawer was old, rusted, and gave way quicker than Ethan expected. The black binder was right where he remembered. He pulled it out, hands shaking, heart hammering. Page after page of addresses, payment schedules, notes scribbled in his uncle's sharp handwriting. Halfway through, Ethan spotted the clubhouse's address. Next to it were the words, "Accelerated timeline approved, developer ready, SP cooperation secured." He stared at the letters. SP, what does that mean? Grace leaned in, snapping photos with her phone. Then she stopped cold. Her voice went flat. "Stephen Price, SP." Ethan blinked. "Our Stephen?" She nodded slowly. "Our treasurer, our oldest friend, my father's right hand for the last 15 years. Ethan flipped more pages, faster now. The pattern was clear. Low-income areas, small businesses, all evicted fast, all turned over to the same developer within weeks. But then came something that made his stomach twist. 3 months ago, a $5,000 payment marked SP, Advance Installment. "Grace," Ethan said, voice shaking. She read the line and went pale. She didn't need to guess. Then footsteps echoed down the hall. Not the janitor's shuffle. Heavy, steady. The office door opened, and there stood Stephen Price, the man Ethan had seen every holiday for as long as he could remember. He didn't look angry. He looked tired, defeated. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Grace moved in front of Ethan. "How long have you been helping Vincent?"
Stephen stepped inside, shut the door behind him. 6 months. He told me Earl's gambling would destroy the club anyway. Said I could walk away with something instead of nothing. I made a choice.
Grace's voice trembled. You falsified our accounts. You let Earl believe he'd sunk us all. Stephen nodded. He lost money, yes, but not 18,000. Maybe 8, maybe 9. I padded the books, created fake invoices, let the guilt bury him so nobody would ask questions. Ethan's voice cracked. Why? You were family. Stephen looked away. Because I was tired. Because I thought it was over anyway. Vincent offered me 45 grand, enough to start over, somewhere nobody knew my name. He stepped forward. Now give me the binder. I won't hurt either of you. Just walk away. Tell them you couldn't find anything. But Ethan wasn't listening anymore. His eyes had landed on something else, an old fire alarm mounted near the filing cabinet, the kind with a metal handle and no modern fail-safes. Without thinking, he lunged and yanked it down. The alarm screamed through the building. Stephen flinched, Grace threw open the window, and Ethan dove onto the fire escape, binder clutched to his chest. Grace followed a second later. They didn't stop running until they reached the car. The alarm still wailed behind them. Ethan collapsed into the seat, breathless. We got it! Grace stared at the binder in his lap. Now let's get it to someone who can stop this before Vincent finds out it's gone. Grace didn't waste a minute. She drove straight to the sheriff's department with Ethan by her side, the binder heavy on his lap like a bomb that hadn't gone off yet. It was almost 10 o'clock at night. They had less than 9 hours before the Liberty Sons were supposed to vacate. Grace marched to the front desk and demanded to speak to someone in charge. At first, the officer on duty looked skeptical. Another landlord dispute, he assumed. But when Grace opened the binder and pointed to the names, signatures, and handwritten timelines marked with things like accelerated eviction and payment secured, the tone in the room changed quickly. The desk sergeant called his lieutenant. The lieutenant called the city attorney. Within an hour, Vincent Morgan was placed in custody. By midnight, a judge had issued an emergency stay on the eviction notice, citing the need to investigate potential abuse of public office and fraudulent property seizures. The clubhouse wasn't going anywhere, at least not tonight. Back at the Liberty Sons, most of the members had already gathered, called in by Tom, Julian, and others who still believed something wasn't adding up. The tension in the room was thick, like the air before a storm. Everyone had heard whispers about Vincent, but nobody expected what came next. Grace stood at the front of the room, binder in hand. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Every eye was already on her. We have evidence, she said calmly. Vincent Morgan has been running a scheme to illegally seize properties around this county, including this clubhouse, and he didn't act alone. Murmurs rippled through the group. Ethan stood near the back, partially hidden behind Julian. Grace continued. Stephen Price has been helping him for over 6 months. He manipulated our accounting records. He created fake debts. He made sure my father thought the situation was beyond saving. The room erupted. Disbelief turned to anger in seconds. Stephen? Someone shouted. No way! Where is he? Let me talk to him face to face. Grace held up a hand. He's gone. Took Vincent's emergency cash and disappeared tonight. The police are looking for him. There's already a warrant out. Corman, who'd been silent until now, looked like the wind had been knocked out of him. How bad was it? He asked. Grace nodded toward the binder. Bad enough that Earl believed he'd lost $18,000 when the real gambling losses were closer to 9. All eyes turned to Earl, who sat in the corner looking smaller than anyone had ever seen him. He didn't try to defend himself. I still lost that money, he said quietly. I lied to all of you. Clay being worse doesn't make me innocent.
Tom stepped forward. "No, it doesn't, but it means we're not dead yet, and that matters." Grace took a breath. "The eviction has been suspended. The city attorney is opening a full investigation. There will be questions, but right now, this place is safe." Ethan watched as the words settled across the room. Some men nodded slowly, others sat frozen, processing the betrayal, the near loss, the fact that they were still standing.
Daniel, one of the younger members, looked over and pointed to Ethan. You got the binder?" All heads turned again. Ethan felt his face flush, his fingers fidgeting at his sides. Grace didn't let the silence linger. "He did more than that. He risked everything. His uncle threatened him. His family depends on Vincent financially, and he still came forward because we helped him once and he wanted to help us back." Earl stood, knees stiff, and crossed the room toward Ethan. For a second, Ethan wasn't sure what to expect, but then Earl knelt down so their eyes met. "You saved us," he said. "Not just the building. You saved this family from tearing itself apart." His voice cracked as he added, "I don't deserve it, but thank you." Ethan swallowed hard. "You helped me when nobody else would. I couldn't just let them take everything away from you." Julian stepped forward next, the man who'd been with the club since the first year. "We need a vote," he said. "The bylaws are clear. Anyone who betrays the club is out. Stephen Price is no longer one of us. But we also need to vote on Earl. He lied. He gambled away money that wasn't his." Earl didn't argue. "I'll resign tonight. That's fair." Tom raised a hand. "Let's not rush this. Yes, Earl screwed up, but he's owned it, and he's the one who built this club from the ground up. Clay's betrayal was cold and calculated. Earl's mistake was human. And right now, maybe what we need most is to remember what it means to fight for each other." The discussion went back and forth for nearly 30 minutes. In the end, the vote was close, but Earl was allowed to stay under 2 conditions. He would begin addiction counseling within the week, and he would no longer manage any financial matters without oversight. Earl agreed without hesitation. Then Daniel raised his voice once more. "I move that we make Ethan Morgan an honorary member of the Liberty Sons. Youngest brother we've ever had." The vote was unanimous. Ethan's eyes welled with tears he tried hard to hide as Tom placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're one of us now, kid," he said. "That means something." 6 weeks later, the parking lot outside the clubhouse was full of smoke, not from engines, but from barbecue grills. Grace had organized a community fundraiser to help pay off the last of the club's legitimate debts. The turnout was bigger than anyone expected. People came not just to eat and donate, but because the story of what happened had made headlines across the county. Vincent Morgan had been charged with multiple counts of fraud and abuse of public office. Stephen Price was still missing, but federal warrants had been issued. And the Liberty Sons had become, in the eyes of the town, something more than a biker club. They were a family they refused to break. Earl stood at the grill, flipping burgers. 3 weeks sober, he looked healthier than he had in months. Grace managed the donation box, chatting with neighbors and thanking every person who showed up. And Ethan, he served plates, wearing a Liberty Sons t-shirt that still hung too big on his thin frame. By the end of the day, they'd raised enough to clear every last dollar of real debt. As the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the pavement, Ethan sat on the clubhouse steps between Tom and Julian. The hum of laughter, country music, and clinking bottles filled the air. Earl looked up from the grill and caught Grace's eye. He smiled, a real one, the first in what felt like years. Tom nudged Ethan. "You good, kid?" Ethan thought for a second. About his uncle, now sitting in a jail cell. About Stephen, somewhere out there on the run. About his mother, who cried when she learned what he'd done, but held him close and told him she was proud. And about this, sitting between men who had once scared him, but who now felt like family. He nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." Julian raised his beer. To the kid who didn't stay quiet. All around them, voices echoed back the same words. Ethan ducked his head, smiling in spite of himself. The Liberty Sons had survived, scarred
Smaller, but still here. And a 14-year-old boy helped make sure they stayed that way. Because sometimes the smallest voice is the one that saves the whole damn room.